at that moment, like where the body is open and the baby is doing all the spiritual and magical and physical things that he needs to do to get out, that we are leaving this reality. Like we are going into the stars to get the baby, to bring the baby in. Like, is that not like so beautiful?
Today, we're going to be talking about the power of birth, the initiation of the human soul, and the divine feminine. Every person on the planet, aside from maybe some weird experiments in China, incarnated into this world through a woman giving birth. It is one of the most significant initiations as a human, maybe next to death. And yet, it isn't often discussed outside the circles of mothers, and birth experiences are still often hidden away in hospitals. And the creation and birth of babies, in my opinion, is the most mystical and magical act of creation on earth. So it only makes sense to me that there would be wisdom, nourishment, profound insight that can be gained by gazing into this deep spiritual process and portal. And I feel it's critical for humanity at this time to stay connected, curious, and supportive of this process. Whether you are male or female, however old or young, no matter if you choose to have children or not, we all came through this gate. And so, for you personally and for us collectively, it is a worthy exploration. It's also important to note that your birth experience has a significant impact on your life. I have other videos on this. So, hearing and tuning into what's possible around birth and positive birth experiences can begin to heal and repattern your own birth trauma if that's something you experienced. So, I can think of no better person to guide us through this exploration today than Maryn Green. And she's just incredible, wonderful person. And she's been witnessed and supported hundreds of births. She co-founded the midwifery and doula schools Indiebirth, called Indiebirth. And she's birthed 10 children herself. So she's experienced. I feel the space that you've been in so many times in this like liminal threshold portal.
It
But
is.
specifically at that moment of birth, like what is that gate? What does it feel like to you? What is the experience of that moment?
Mm. Yeah, it's like makes me feel emotional even thinking about it, honestly. Individually and honestly collectively, because I think there's so much to like even witness a woman in the rawest part of herself. And again, that's part of the hormones as well. And that's even as a midwife, like kind of how you're gauging how this is going in a sense. Like, is this woman fully primal? Is
Mm.
this is this a woman you've not even seen before in a sense, because the mask has been taken off? I mean, that's the ideal place. And I've heard it be said, I did not come up with this idea, but I really resonate with it, that at that moment, like where the body is open and the baby is doing all the spiritual and magical and physical things that he needs to do to get out, that we are like leaving this reality. Like we are going into the stars to get the baby and like to bring the baby in. Like, is that not like so beautiful? And I think that's what it feels like. Like that is what it has felt like for me when I had had enough babies in a way to like really, it's like an opposite because you're not present, but you know what I mean, to be present to that, um that crazy, I don't even know what to
To be
call it. Like it's
conscious
not
of
just a
it.
feeling. Yeah, to be conscious of it, to be conscious of like that happening and to feel kind of like the skies open up. And you know, physically, to be honest, it can feel like your body's going to break open, um because you are sort of dying to all the old ideas of yourself. This baby, again, whether it's your first or your 20th, this baby brings forth a new version of yourself and is the one, like that you are the mother this baby needs and this is the baby you need. So it's like so fantastic. And witnessing other women in that space is like so humbling because again, in the best of circumstances, there's no saving from that. And I think that's a temptation initially if you're attending births, just like, oh my gosh, like, how can I help her? And I see that in a lot of partners, of course. Oh my God, she's in so much pain. What can we do? And it's like, no, like, no, like, not that we're not acknowledging it's hard, but actually, no words need to be spoken is something I've learned over time is when she's at that breaking point. And having been there myself, it's kind of like the worst thing to engage that, right? Because sometimes women will say, oh my God, I'm dying. Or I've said out loud, I can't do this or something like that. And I've learned over time that it's best to just let that be, like let that be in the energy of the room and not validate it and not need to negate it. It's just like hold that, because what that woman is really saying, I think, or what I have meant when I've said it is like, please see me in this, like please witness me in this. But again, I think cultural stuff and conditioning, sometimes the words are such that it's like, oh, save me. And you do not want to be saved from that, woman. Like that is your power. That is absolutely why we came here, a lot of us, right? So it is so glorious. And that's again where the medicalized model and a lot of midwifery models have it all wrong. There's nothing that women needs generally, but that's also when a sense of panic can ensue. Oh my God, let's check the baby's heart rate. Oh, let's get you over here. Oh, wait, don't push yet. No, just like let her be. Let this
Mm.
baby, let them figure it out, because there's rarely anything wrong at that moment. But it's a high intensity. You can feel it palpably in the room, of course. And I think just mentioning, as you did before, there is life, there is death. You can feel them both in the room during birth. And as that baby gets closer to coming earthside, truly, the veil is so thin. The veil is so thin, and you can't overthink it, you can't. And I try to prepare partners that way too. I'm like, you're going to feel death in the room, um you know but
Wow.
that's not that's not what we're holding. I mean, for this baby, of course, but that's the intensity of it. So, if that's really too much for you, for a partner, like it's fine to leave. It's fine to do what you need to do then. Like just go do what you need to do.
Yeah.
But it is that big, and let's not make it anything less, because I think the woman and the baby deserve that, right? They deserve the sky opening for them, even though birth is normal. Birth is happening every second. For that woman and that baby, it is absolutely an initiation for both of them.
Yeah. And in some sense that like dying, it kind of feels like cliche coming out, but is it a dying to the maiden and like becoming like the creator mother, or like a dying to that old perceived self and like stepping into, yeah, the unmasked primal of an aspect like they've never seen of themselves? Like it's all of it, that
It's all
initiation.
of it. It's all of it. And like I said, it's also stepping into the version that this baby has called in for you both. And I don't know how to say it any better, but having done it 10 times, each time I've said to myself, like, I wonder who I'll be after this. Like, down to choices made in life. Like, after my last birth, it was like, I wonder where we'll go. I wonder what we'll see, because, like, this birth did that. This baby is that powerful that, like, our whole family, you know, made a shift and now has made it again. And I think that's still some of that energy of our last baby rippling out, because that's what they do. And I think the ones coming in lately are so powerful. Like they have it down, and yeah, they're just
Yeah.
directing us.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing all this for me. It's so good. I love
So
being in
much.
this liminal space. It's so nice. Ah, um, what would you say to the, I mean, you spoke to the heavens opening up, which I actually witnessed. I don't even know that you knew this, but when you were giving birth one of the times, I think it was like 8 or 9, not sure which kid, but
Yeah.
it hadn't rained in Sedona all summer, and you were like in you were not giving birth, but you were in the process. And I was like hiking around right around Chimney, like right where you lived. And I was hiking with a friend, and like the skies opened and like the thunder and lightning was just going crazy. And it was like the first time in the whole season. And I was like, this is Maryn and her baby. Like this is what this is. Like I know this nature,
Oh,
I know this land. This is that happening.
yeah. Oh,
So
wow.
it was so cool. But you spoke to the heavens opening. I'm curious what you experience on the baby side, like of the incarnating soul side of like what you hear and perceive, experience of that process of like soul to body or not, or
Hmm. It's been different in all of my children as far as when it feels like the soul has entered the body. And obviously, I'm not going to tell you all of their stories, but some were really early in the pregnancy and they were very physically in this reality in a way, like very grounded. Others I can remember maybe like mid pregnancy, like I can remember with my um, fifth baby, I was at a birth when I felt her come into her body. It was so weird. And I was probably like halfway through that pregnancy. And then a couple of them didn't really feel like they were residing in the body that they had in my womb, that they were somewhere else. One very concretely, he's my 14-year-old, and he had a complicated birth story in a sense. Like everything was fine in the end, but when he was born, his soul was not in his body, and that was a medical emergency in a sense. But from a spiritual perspective, it makes sense now. That's kind of how he does it, especially during big transitions. So it wasn't the most fun to experience, really. But he did come into his body. It took him a little bit. And I'd say the last baby I had, Rumi, was similar. He spent a lot of time in the stars. There's just no other way to say it. Like I could go outside pregnant and be like, oh my gosh, you're out there. And I would have to, like, if I wanted to, I could be like, come on, like come back for a while. Like I want to feel you in here and I want to like check in with you. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, they have other missions they're doing. I think they have other realities they're working in and on, and codes that they're trying to receive and things they're giving when they come in. So it's really not a one size fits all, even though I know there are cultures in which like there are certain beliefs about when the soul comes in on this day. That's great. People can work with that, but that's not been my experience. And so I feel like that's been helpful though, like in working with other women. Because there's a lot of conversation around that. Sometimes women are like, I just don't feel that connected. Like, I don't know what is going on here. And I can relate. I've been there. It doesn't mean anything is bad or wrong, but it's such a complete or more complete way of viewing maybe like what's going on here. And actually, I wouldn't even pretend to know at all what's going on here, but
yeah.
it's definitely not just like, oh, I have a baby in my body and like that's where they are. Not for me anyway. It hasn't been that way.
Interesting. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's I think that's really helpful for everyone, because all those pieces of like this is very unknown, and then it's not going the way that it's said to be going, like that the soul's right there or not. So I think being flexible and really listening, I think that's really helpful.
I think it's also a good reminder that even though we've talked about hormones and this body we're in and the way to make it kind of work perfectly, that it really would be arrogant to assume that we have even that much control in a sense. And reminding us that if we view birth as this spiritual process, if this isn't a baby, right? This is a soul. This is a soul choosing to incarnate that also has karmic duty and all of these things, that this soul also plays a huge role, obviously, in how it's born and when it's born and all of that. So again, for women that are like, oh, like I'm eating all the right foods and I'm doing all the right stuff and I'm going to have this perfect birth, red flag, because usually they're the ones that are not listening, maybe, perhaps, right? I
Yeah.
don't know for everybody. Um, but yeah, like let's not be arrogant about it either. And natural birth and spiritual birth is beautiful. And again, I think the new consciousness is leading us to it anyway. But I'm bringing it up because sometimes birth is hard and can be not what we expect. And rarely babies don't live. Like there are things that happen that, again, people in this space sometimes don't want to talk about. But my last birth was really hard and I wouldn't have changed it for the world. And I don't even completely understand all of the reasons, and maybe I never will, but there are also reasons that my baby had and things he needed and choices he was making. So again, it just adds to the mystery of it all, and comes back to the trust that it will be what it needs to be.
Yeah. I love that. And I can definitely personally attest to that because I mean, I was like induced in early, because of toxemia of my mom, the whole thing. And that my birth experience and birth trauma, I mean, led me to the path I'm taking right now. Like, I probably wouldn't be
Exactly.
having this conversation sitting here with you right now, wanting to create containers of safety and like inform and bring awareness, like, if I hadn't had that disrupted in my birth. Like, it's why
Yes,
I do what I do. And so I think trusting in that is important and not letting that be a bypass, of like, well, then I can just take the easy way out or whatever, but like go ride the threshold as much as you can and whatever it is meant to be will be.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I feel the same about my birth. I wouldn't be here either if it wasn't for that. And I think it allows us to just look at how human we are in a way too, as mysterious and magical as it all is. We are in human bodies and we have lineages and we have things that happen before us. And, our brains don't really need to know how that all weaves together necessarily. Um, but it's there, it's definitely there. And if we're talking about birth as this complex process, then that just has to be included because otherwise, I guess what's the point? Like sometimes people are wanting a recipe for a perfect birth from someone that has seen a lot, and it's like, oh, definitely I have thoughts and I've seen certain patterns play out, right? And certain belief systems
Right.
sometimes end up looking a certain way. But at the end of it, I would say, even after hundreds of births, I would say, I actually have no idea that there'll be a situation where, you could predict X, Y, and Z. Oh my gosh, this woman, I blah, blah, blah. You have a whole story written around it and it'll completely surprise you. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
yeah.
So to close, are there any other awarenesses or helpful things or misconceptions you want to speak to around birth? That's kind of like a lot of questions, but like if just anything sparked that you're like, "Ooh, this
Mm.
might be a moment for someone to hear something. This is what I want to share."
If people are up for watching births, as I said, our YouTube channel is pretty good for that, as is our Instagram. And I encourage it, of course. I have no problem putting my own birth videos out there in all my naked glory because, like, this is birth. It can look like this, it can feel like this. And we have to reacquaint ourselves with that truth. Whether or not that it looks like that for every woman isn't really my goal. It's more just this collective consciousness that birth is not gross, it is not generally scary. Um, it is really beautiful. And if we can get past our own traumas and our own fears and just see that for what it is and see this woman, in all of her power, and again, see this baby, um, you know, I think why I do this. Like, that will change the world. People killing each other, all the violence that is. It's not a long shot to say that if more babies were born in peace and love, that ultimately wouldn't be happening. The violence that's being played out in the world is the violence of birth on, on a different scale. Um, because just average birth right now, like average birth in a hospital, sometimes even at home, it is actually violent. It is not just disrespectful to the mom and the baby, but it shortchanges like both of them of this amazing, like energetic and spiritual experience. And that affects them for the rest of their lives. So again, not to go into the negative, but it affects mothering, and mothers that aren't strong and capable, that also affects the world. Why do you think people are out killing each other? Because they had no bonding, they had no maternal connection, they had no solid ground in being birthed and raised. They were, cut, like literally cut from their mother, with no sense of safety. So it is so important that we pay more attention to the way babies are born. Again, it doesn't mean every baby will choose to be born in this way, but I know it matters. I mean, my kids alone, the 10 of them, are testament to that they are different. They are different in the world. They are different in how they relate to people. They have never been exposed to that. They've never been exposed to the normal things that happen to a baby, other than my first, who did experience that. But being taken from your mother, not breastfeeding because the hormonal cocktail got so fucked up that the woman couldn't produce breast milk, right? Like, we could go 4 more hours with all the interventions that take away from the connection, but connection is what we need as humans. So it's really common sense that if we wanted more peace and we wanted more connection, we would need to start at the beginning, and that beginning is birth.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. With everything going on in the world, it's like, all right, this returns to birth and mother bond and all of those pieces. And even the witnessing, the honoring of the birth process, where it's like if you see and you witness how much a woman goes through, how much a baby goes through, and that whole process, it's like to just end that might be just even a little bit harder, which would be good.
Yeah, any amount of improvement would be good, for
Yeah.
real. Any amount of small improvements. And not to go off on another tangent, just really briefly, that if people are listening and they're like, yes, yes, like, especially if you're a woman that hasn't had a baby yet, there's so much there as well, right? Like, like there's so many ways to learn about our bodies and to start making connections. That way, birth doesn't feel like this weird standalone thing that we're doing with our bodies that we never trusted in the first place.
Yeah.
So I don't generally, I'm only one person as you are. Like, my focus is where it is. But if I had a million more, hours in the day, I very much care about what girls and boys, what kids are being taught about their bodies and their power, because it doesn't just arrive. And I think that's a huge challenge for a lot of women. So just start small and start listening. And that's really all you have to do if you have the intention of changing this for your family, which is a great place to start. Most of the women I work with are the ones that came to change things for their family, and they're aware of that. And I think just having that awareness is enough. You don't have to be perfect, like, you don't have to understand it all. You can have had all kinds of stuff go on in your past, but it's the simple intention that things need to be different for the babies that come from your body.
Yes. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all that, Maryn.
Yeah.
Yeah, just so appreciate you. And I would love for you to share what's going on in your world and where people can find you and watch the bursts and learn more and get more connected with themselves and this process.
Thank you. Indiebirth.org is our main site. Of course, we're on Instagram. Sometimes that feels unfortunate, but most days it's fortunate. Lots to watch and see there. We have our own social platform on Mighty Networks, so you can find most of those links on our Instagram. So if you'd like to be part of that, it's a free network and just get to know more of what we're doing. All of our courses are housed there as well. So if you're interested in becoming a doula, we do have a doula academy. If you're interested in becoming a midwife, we have a midwifery school, and we have a bunch of other courses as well. We have a postpartum doula course that's new called Mothering the Mother, and that's all about caring for women after birth, which is a huge area of interest for lots of women because you don't have to have any experience to do that. I think
Right.
there is a lot to know. I am offering a retreat here on Oahu in that vein, the Mothering the Mother. We're going to do a hands-on postpartum workshop here in February. So also, I'm sure you'll find the link on our Instagram. Indiebirthmidwiferyschool.org is the school site. And other than that, my podcast is called Taking Back Birth. And there's probably almost 300 episodes by now. So you could go crazy listening to all of the things about midwifery and pregnancy and birth. But otherwise, I just really am appreciative of you, Bridget, personally, for being so beautiful and conscious, but for using your platform and your space to just help to help babies be born, in the way that they're asking, which I think is, why you're part of this as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's the number one most significant thing that I've come to help humanity. So let's keep on sharing about it.
Let's keep on sharing about it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Maryn. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll catch you next time.